Hi everyone, my name's Merrick and today I'll be talking about the deterrent effect of capital punishment. So first, let's answer this question. What is the death penalty? Well, the death penalty is pretty straightforward. You kill, as a punishment for murdering someone, someone's put to death. So a murderer is killed for committing the act of murder. So as Dr. Rollins has said in his lecture videos, it's not given to every single murderer, but it's saved for the worst of the worst, the ones that have kind of gone above and beyond what we'd consider, for lack of a better term, a standard murder. So then an important question to ask is, what is the deterrent effect of the death penalty? Well, as we've learned in this class from both the textbook and Dr. Rollins' lecture videos, one of the main goals of punishment is to prevent not only the criminal that committed the act that's getting punished, to prevent him from committing this crime in the future, but it's also supposed to prevent future potential criminals from committing this act out of fear of receiving the same fate and getting the same punishment. So why does it matter to you if the death penalty is an effective deterrent of homicide? Well, one big point is the cost of the death penalty, just how much it costs to have it in place. So the death penalty has cost California $4 billion since 1978. That is a lot of money. And if we're going to pay that much money into a punishment, then it ought to be effective. That's just basic economics for you. And I know that we don't live in California or in Michigan, but really, the death penalty is standard across all the states, and the costs for it in California would be very similar, minus a few discrepancies, to any other state that would run it. So if it's not effective, then why are we paying for this punishment if it's not an effective deterrent of homicide when there's other options out there like life imprisonment? So let's look at the numbers to kind of establish if the death penalty is an effective deterrent of homicide or not. So by looking at the homicide rates in Louisiana, we can see that there are 11.8 homicides committed per 100,000 people. And that's the highest statewide rate. Now, if you look at New Hampshire, there's 0.8 homicides per 100,000 people. That's the lowest statewide rate. And the interesting thing here is that Louisiana actually does have the death penalty in place, and New Hampshire does not. So it's interesting that Louisiana, who does have the death penalty, has the highest statewide murder rate, and New Hampshire has the lowest when they don't have the death penalty. So that would kind of point towards the fact that maybe the death penalty isn't an effective deterrent of homicide. But I think a more important statistic that kind of goes along these same lines here is that death penalty states in general have had higher homicide rates than non-death penalty states since 1990. And I actually have a little graph here for you that displays this really well. So this red trend line here are the murder rates in death penalty states, and the blue trend line are the murder rates in non-death penalty states. And as you can see from looking at this figure, the murder rates in non-death penalty states have been consistently lower than the murder rates in death penalty states since 1990. So let's examine a case study, and right now I'll talk about the case of Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof committed a mass murder in South Carolina at a church in Charleston, and it was racist killings, and he killed 9 people. And South Carolina does have the death penalty in place. And another interesting fact that occurred from this article written by Long in 2019 in the AP News is that all but 2 of the states where mass killings have occurred have the death penalty in place. So not only is the death penalty not being super effective at deterring just regular homicides, they're not even deterring mass killings. These killers are actually committing mass murders more often in these states with a death penalty than the states that don't. And so all these statistics kind of point towards the fact that maybe the death penalty isn't such an effective deterrent of homicide. So some final thoughts before I close off my presentation here is that the death penalty is really expensive. As I talked about earlier in the presentation, it's cost California $4 billion since 1978, and that's a lot of money. And as you've seen through my statistics, it's not a completely effective deterrent of homicide. So are there other options? Could we maybe imprison people for life at a cheaper rate than the death penalty? That's definitely an option. And so it's important to understand this to say, is it really worth to have the death penalty if it's not as effective and it costs this much? Well, thank you for watching.